I watched and waited in the woods for the perfect moment. It came when they were doing doggy, and his ass was bouncing like a saw. Being a carpenter's daughter, that's the way I thought. Guessing the moment, I swung like a baseball pitch, and the sound of the impact was so loud you could hear the aluminum clinking. She slammed into him with such force that he fell on top of her, and they both collapsed onto the blanket. She immediately knew something was wrong, and while they were trying to free themselves from each other, I grabbed their clothes and threw them into the lake. Admittedly, if I were doing this in the wild, this place would be a great choice. I turned around and grinned. Hey, honey. Geez, this doesn't look like a golf or sports bar. There's not even a television. Too bad. I would have loved to see your face when you realized the $500 you bet was gone. The radio said the team was losing by 13 points when I turned off the car. Don't try to get up. Lie down and breathe. In 10 minutes, you should be able to get up with minimal pain. Until your muscles can handle the pain, don't move. I'm a nurse, remember? His girlfriend stood by the tree, and I smirked at her, seeing her eyes glisten with anger. I'm going to tear you. I waved the bat, silencing her. Honey, you better sit down and be quiet. If you attack me, I'm going to defend myself. I won't kill you, but if you continue, your pretty little nose will look like a crushed grape, and your smile will never be bright again. Is that clear? Her hands instinctively reached up to her face, and she slowly sank down onto the blanket. I lifted my husband's head by his hair. Well, if you had to do it, at least you picked a pretty one. Her husband probably thinks so too. Do you want to call him and ask him? He tried his best to shake his head, but I pinned him down again. I won't tell him. I don't need to. Her name will come up in the divorce court papers. People love that sort of thing, and someone is bound to ask him about it soon. Her eyes grew wide, and she suddenly leaned in, throwing up right at him. He had always had a weak stomach, and soon he, too, was lying next to her. Wow, what did you have for lunch? It smells awful. I took a couple steps back, not wanting them to stain my new white sneakers. I grinned. As much as I'd like to keep talking, I should get going. My divorce attorney is expecting me at noon to pick up your pictures of you two together. I know this is the 5th time you've been here. Believe it or not, I caught you thanks to security cameras. You can buy 2 high-resolution cameras on Amazon for a couple $100. You didn't even notice them, and the images went straight to my phone. Funny thing is, you're not the only one using this love nest. I don't know their names, but it's clear they're cheating too. I think I'll take some pictures and hang them in the park restroom. Someone will recognize them. They come here a lot. I turned to my soon-to-be ex. Before I came, I packed you up and sent you to the room your company uses for guests. You have a key, since you used it when it rained. I bet you enjoyed sleeping on the bed for a change. Don't you dare come home. Got it? I turned to her. Okay, honey, time to get off the blanket. She realized it was the only thing she could cover herself with when I left and pulled it tighter. I picked up the bat. Well, take your nose and remember that feeling because it won't happen again. She shrieked and jumped off the blanket. I carefully picked it up around the corner, not wanting to inhale the smell, and tossed it into the lake, watching it float toward the water. I turned back to them. Well, I think we're done here. Remember where your clothes are, Nathan. If you want, I can return them to you. Otherwise, I'll do it at work. It's 50-50, so don't fight it. If you resist, I'll destroy you. I gave his girlfriend some advice. The best thing you can do is go home and confess. I was going to ignore you until I found out you were planning a baby. And who's it going to be? Don't answer that, but if it was me, I'd like to know. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I grinned through the pain, walking quickly back down the path. I was kind enough to leave them shoes, but nothing else. Those rocks were sharp. 3 minutes later, I was on the ball field. There was a regional tournament in the county, and all 4 fields were full, with 24 teams competing. It was crowded, and the coverage was perfect. I bought a team hat that completely covered my hair, took my bat on my shoulder, and walked around like I owned the place, and no one noticed me. Well, a few guys did notice because I was wearing red biker shorts that were tight around my body and ended almost to my camel toe. Also, there were a lot of women here dressed more provocatively than me, so I got lost in the crowd. If a guy had been asked if he'd seen a sexy woman in tight red shorts, he probably would have said, "Which one?" So I changed my t-shirt to a bright pink one that showed off a little belly, put a red plaid skirt over the shorts, fluffed up my short bangs, and now I didn't look like a jock with a bat in the park at all. I dressed so that people would remember me when I stopped for groceries. I tossed the bat next to the team's SUV. Even if it didn't belong to them, I'm sure they wouldn't leave a good bat lying around, and it would be in their bag by the end of the day. I found it on the ground and impulsively picked it up, thinking it might come in handy if he got aggressive. I had no intention of hurting them. I just wanted to scare them off and be done with it. I tossed the cap in the trash as soon as I drove away from the field, and 2 blocks later I shifted into my minivan, glad my mom had left it for me when she moved south. "It might come in handy," she said with a smirk. I used it once a week for weekend runs to keep in shape. The darkened rear windows were perfect for changing clothes. Before I started the engine, I had pulled out my phone and turned on the scrambler I'd bought on Amazon. It allowed 3 female and 4 male voices, some with accents. I bought it so I could anonymously notify her husband and ambush her with a divorce. That should work too. I chose the voice of an older man with a thick southern accent. "Hello, is this 911? I began, trying to set the tone. "Yes, sir. What is your emergency?" "There's a woman and a man walking around with bare asses in Reynolds Park. They're young. Could you send someone out to tell them to get dressed? It's a tall guy with black hair and a petite red-headed girl with big, breasts." "Sir, we have officers in the park. We'll send someone right away. You can name your, I hung up the phone, pulled out my battery, and tossed it in the trash can. After driving 4 blocks, I parked at the local donut store and tossed the phone in the trash can between the store and the grocery store. I made sure to chat with Hillary, the saleswoman, and treated myself to a donut with molasses and maple glaze. It was an unexpected combination, but probably the best dessert I've ever had. I took my time enjoying the Cajun-style coffee with the addition of chicory, which gave it a tangy flavor and paired perfectly with the donut. As I left the store, I said goodbye and tossed the scrambler into the trash can by the entrance, drowning it in my coffee cup. Then I went shopping, gossiping with the neighborhood wives, met Beryl, I'd never heard that name before, I think it had to do with semi-precious stones or something, and gently teased her nephew Dick about his crush on the new cashier. She was cute as a button, and although he was blonde with long surfboard-like curls and would have looked perfect on a beach in California, she was black. She had green eyes and a killer smile. Judging by her sly looks and cute smile, she was interested in him too. "Honey, just ask her. The worst that can happen is a rejection. Don't worry about her skin color, social status, or parents. Ask her out on a date. I have a feeling it might end well for you." Beryl grinned and repeated my advice. They were gone by the time we left the store, but then we saw them outside at the picnic table the store provided for smokers. They were 16, and I knew his mom would kill him if she caught him with a cigarette. But they weren't smoking. They were talking softly, and she had her hand in his, playing with his fingers, her long curls scattered across her face. I couldn't resist taking a picture. As I left, I smiled, but the smile was replaced by a hopeless sadness. I remembered how my husband used to look at me that way. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I wasn't even surprised to see 2 police officers on my porch as I pulled up to the house. I went into the garage to unload groceries. They stood there not knowing what to do until finally one of them spoke up. "Ma'am, are you Brittany Chory?" "Yes." I think they expected more and were surprised when I said yes. "Can we ask you some questions?" "Sure, but I need to get groceries into the house. I have ice cream." They started to back away, but I held up my hand. "I didn't invite you in." That infuriated the older man. "You need to talk to us." "Have I been detained? Arrested?" "No, not at the moment." "Then please excuse me while I get the groceries. I'll be right back." I was sure this was not the behavior they were expecting. I took my time, and to calm them down a bit, I poured 3 glasses of ice water, set them on a table by the porch swing, and invited them to sit down. The woman took the water and thanked me. The elderly male police officer only frowned. Suddenly, I realized who he was. A relative of my husband's, but I couldn't remember exactly how. I read his name tag as he spoke. "Are you Brittany Chory? You don't remember me from the family reunion 2 months ago?" "Yes, that's my name." "Your husband is Nathan Chory?" "Not for long. He's being deployed on Tuesday. If you need his new address, it's Business Suite 36 at the embassy." The woman grinned slightly. I think she liked my lack of deference. "Does the name Barbara Simpson mean anything to you?" "Yes. That's the slut he's been sleeping with for the last 4 months. Maybe longer. You don't need to show me a picture. I have a lot of them. Unfortunately, most of them show her naked. Still, she's an attractive woman, so maybe you'll like them. I've been kind to you, but if you don't tell me right now why you're here, you can leave. Your husband was attacked this morning. Did you come here to tell me that and cheer me up? What husband grabbed him? Is he bruised, maimed, or maybe castrated?" My cheerful demeanor seemed to startle him, and the woman grinned behind his back. "He was only hit once with a baseball bat." "Did he get hit in the head? Did it knock some sense into him? Where did he get hit? Did it break his ribs, his kneecap, his ego?" The woman spoke up, opening her notebook. "From the looks of it, he was hit in the buttocks, and pretty hard at that." "Oh, so someone spanked him." The senior policeman was fed up. "You have to take this seriously. He says you attacked him. Do you have an alibi?" "When did this happen?" "A little over an hour ago." "Well, as far as alibis go, how many people wake up one day and say, 'Hey, I probably need an alibi today. I better document my every move for the rest of the day'? No, fuck it, I don't have an alibi. But I can tell you where I've been. Prepare for excitement. I went to the grocery store. I also got a donut at Sugar Rush, the molasses and maple one. God, I could live on those, at least until my arteries shut down. They probably have cameras there, but I don't know. I talked to friends while I was shopping, and the woman at the donut store can probably vouch for me too. You'll have to ask them about timelines because I have no idea. And then I came home and saw you guys on the porch." The woman grinned. "They have killer donuts, don't they?" "The best. So you've talked to me. I've given you my moves for the day, so why don't you go check me out? Have a good day." He pouted. "We're not done with you yet." "Yes, we are. If I don't get detained or arrested, you've got nothing. And in fact, if you have any more questions, put them in writing and give them to my attorney. I have his card in my purse right here." I pulled out the card and held it out to him. "You haven't done anything wrong, but you have a lawyer. Don't you find that a little suspicious?" "This guy handles my divorce, Bart Paris, but he does other things. Why don't I have his card?" He was getting angry because he couldn't get any further. "I still have questions. And you have a business card of someone who can answer them. Let me ask you something. I have a rather unusual outfit, wouldn't you agree? It was a statement. I'm about to go back on the market, and I wanted to do a little advertising for myself. Did they describe what the attacker was wearing? I'm sure anyone in the park would remember a woman in a pink belly shirt and a bright red short skirt walking through the park." "Is it once where—" "Why don't you go and interview someone? There were 500 or 600 people there. I'm sure someone will remember me. You took their statements, you took mine. So maybe it's time for you to go to hell." He was almost speechless. "You can't talk to the police like that." "Of course I can. Barney Fife. It's called the First Amendment. I can say anything I want, including using profanity. Take a look at this. We need to search your car and your house." "Gee, does everything you say sound like some kind of statement or something? You can search the car and the house if you want, as soon as you bring me a warrant. I can wait." I turned to the woman. "Talk some sense into him before he escalates the matter to litigation." She looked nervous. "Nathan, maybe we need what I'm saying. What you need is to get off my porch. I've been patient with you, but you have no proof that I did what you're accusing me of. And it's a he said, she said scenario. And I'm not saying a damn thing. You don't have probable cause to arrest me. We've already crossed the line of reasonable detention, so I'm leaving. You'll go when I say you can go. Then you'd better damn well say it, because we're done. Go home. Occupy your own time and ruin someone else's marriage. That's why your own wife divorced you, if the family stories are true. You're just like my husband, so it must run in the family. Your line obviously comes from a long history of losers. It's hot right now. I've been cooperating, but it's time to call it a day. Ma'am, have a good day. Back off, loser, and never come back. I couldn't see the stun gun because my back was turned. I felt like every nerve in my body had short-circuited, and I fell to the porch in convulsions. When I came to, I was already handcuffed, and the female officer was yelling furiously at Nathan, "Jesus, Nathan, why did you do that?" She was resisting arrest. You saw it with your own eyes. Now help me get her into the car. They half carried, half dragged me to the car. By the time we arrived at the station, I was inwardly screaming, but I didn't utter a word. When I was processed, I automatically asked for a lawyer. The sergeant, ignoring Nathan, allowed me to make the call. My lawyer was there in 30 minutes, yelling at the police officers. He then contacted the captain, who reviewed the arrest file and released me, promising to appear in court. "You don't have to worry about that. She'll be there with bells on, and we're going to insist that the surveillance footage be shown. According to my client, she was hit from behind with a stun gun without warning, denied her Miranda rights, and illegally arrested. We intend to fry someone's ass over this." The captain turned pale and ordered the officers into his office as we left. Before we left, he had the cops take pictures of my scraped knees and bruised hands. Once we were outside, I grinned. "With bells on?" He blushed slightly. "I've always wanted to say that. Look, if it was like you described, that's a civil suit just waiting to happen. You're looking at a lot of money. I think I broke his heart when I told him I didn't care about the money. I just wanted this guy fired." When we got home, things got even worse. My house was trashed, my clothes torn into rags, my collectibles smashed. My lawyer immediately called the police and asked them to send other officers. They arrived, took pictures, and asked who I thought had done it. My soon-to-be ex-husband. I don't understand how he got in. I changed the locks 2 hours before I was arrested, and there's no sign of forced entry. Let's check the videotape. While the locks were being changed, 2 of his deputies were wiring my house, sending everything to the cloud. I wasn't too surprised to see the idiot corporal unlocking my doors before taking me away, and 40 minutes later, I saw my ex tearing everything to shreds, and then carefully locking the door as he left. He became a guest of the county when he was caught at the embassy 4 hours later. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. It turned out that the body camera tapes had disappeared. Both officers said they had turned them off during lunch and forgot to turn them back on. The DA took one look at the report and dropped all charges, leaving the department with nothing. I demanded a formal apology, but the department refused. When I asked the chief if he really wanted to play it that way, he kicked us out of his office. My lawyer grinned. "Can we sue them now?" The next day, the corporal and officer were sued for civil rights violations for $1 million each. The chief and the entire department and city were sued for $7 million. The city's attorneys said, "We don't have any documentation to support the claim." Then, the video from the ring, my security cameras, and the audio from my phone, which I hid along with the tray and towel when I gave them water, almost gave the city lawyers a heart attack. They wanted to expunge the footage, but there were clear markings from the security cameras, one of which was right by the front door, brand new and shiny at the time. As for the phone, we were in a state where one party could record without consent on public or their own property. While the civil case was going through the courts, my divorce took place. Because I took them on public property, the pictures were submitted as evidence of adultery. For some reason, he resisted the divorce, claiming he still loved me. I claimed I no longer loved him. The judge ordered 4 counseling sessions that turned out to be a waste of time, but he paid. When they were over, the counselor admitted that further sessions would not be helpful. I thought about encouraging him to schedule more since he was paying, but he gave up. We ended up 50-50 as I'd originally proposed, minus his portion of the legal fees. the cost of replacing my clothes, and the damage to the house. That ate up most of his share. We sold the house because I didn't want it anymore and he couldn't afford it. While this drama unfolded in family court, my civil suit moved slowly, mostly because of the city attorneys. They tried to settle a couple times, but my civil rights attorney laughed at their offers. The most they offered was $500,000 and no admission of wrongdoing. The corporal was fired almost immediately after the lawsuit was filed, also for excessive use of force. No department wanted to hire him, and he ended up taking a job with a private security company, which I believe was another lawsuit just waiting to happen. The woman was demoted to base pay and moved to a clerical job. She became a uniformed secretary. I tried to sympathize with her, but when he tasered me, she didn't bother him. So I got over it. There was no criminal case. They had no evidence linking me to the crime. They went over my timeline, talked to the clerk at the donut shop. There were no cameras, and she assumed I was in the store a half hour earlier than I actually was. It came down to eyewitness testimony, and since they couldn't definitively tie me to the scene, it turned into they said/I said, and I kept quiet. The investigation was shelved after a week and never resumed again. So, yes, I got away with the crime. I couldn't believe how lucky I was, and it made me realize that the term crime of passion exists. I always thought it was invented by slick lawyers. Greg's divorce ran almost parallel to ours. He was belligerent, and we had a few nasty confrontations. His lawyer wanted me to testify, but there was no way I'd admit to seeing them live, so he settled for security camera footage, laughing at my low-tech solution. She bumped into me in the hallway one day, and I let my feelings come out. If he hadn't been such a cheap bastard, and you hadn't been such an exhibitionist, you probably wouldn't have gotten caught. 8 blocks from his house, in a public place? Seriously? What did you think was going to happen when you got caught? We weren't supposed to get caught. It was just for fun. Strange. My husband and I didn't think it was funny. You play, you pay. Mark it as a lesson learned and start over. She looked a little mad for a second. I'm going to kick your ass. I just leaned over to her and smirked. Ping. Her head snapped back, and I could see the fear. She never spoke to me again. After negotiations and attorney fees, I got a little over $3 million from the city, and there was a judgment against Corporal Asshole for $1 million, but we all knew I would never see that money. He was also in jail for assaulting a guy at a concert, which landed him in the hospital with a broken nose and 3 broken ribs. He served 9 months in a maximum security penitentiary. Still, that conviction would haunt him like a stray dog for the rest of his life. I bought a small bungalow that I really liked, with a big yard, furnished it to my liking, and took a year's vacation. My investment advisor told me I could make about $50,000 a year, so I was happy, sort of. My best friend and her husband were members of a country club and talked me into joining. I didn't know single women could join country clubs, but apparently if you're a single woman with money, you can make an exception. I took tennis lessons, even though I couldn't play at all, but I thought I looked great in my tennis uniform. Then I tried golf and lasted 8 holes before taking the cart back to the clubhouse. I really enjoyed the pool and sauna and the well-equipped gym. I had a personal trainer, and I was sure she hated girls with money, but she was just doing her job. All the workouts toned my body, and it was noticeable when I put on a bikini. This got me a lot of attention from the catchers that seemed to be all over the clubs, but I quickly blew them off. It gave me credibility among the wives. In this environment, there are always 1 or 2 women who are after a rich husband, and the fact that I was married was no barrier to them. I went on dates, but now I had to look out for any relationship and consider how much it had to do with my money rather than me. Melania and her husband became attached to me and often included me in their activities, and for a while it was fun. Then she came up to me grinning. Do you know how to play softball? No, never held a bat before, except for that one time. Why? Because Donovan's putting together a mixed team and I want you to play with us. It'll be fun. Those words sounded like the last famous words in many situations, but I was bored, so I agreed. I showed up to my first practice without much expectation. I was assigned a mentor, and we started by flipping the ball. Gradually, we increased our strength and speed. She encouraged me and then started teasing me. "You throw like a girl. Use your strength and don't worry about whether I can catch the ball. If I miss, I deserve a bruise." Soon the ball began to lodge itself confidently in her glove. "That's it. Now you get it. Sometimes speed wins or loses the game, so always throw like you want to hit my hand off." Then she started throwing ground balls, gently at first, and then harder and harder, making them sharper and harder to catch. One of them bounced up and hit me in the shin. It hurt, but I just kicked the ball away and asked Marion to throw harder. We took a break and she put ice on my shin to reduce the bruising. Then we practiced hitting with the bat. It was strange to hold the bat in my hands again. It was aluminum, like the one I used to use before. All my training at the gym had paid off. When they threw a slow, soft pitch over the plate, I hit the ball with such force that it soared into the air and flew over the outfield fence. Everyone froze when they heard the ringing sound and watched the ball fly off into the distance. No one was as impressed as I was. Donovan was the pitcher, and he had me swing 10 more times, changing speeds and pitch angles. I struck out 3 times, fouled off easy balls twice, had 3 hits in the outfield that would have been base hits, and knocked the ball out of the park 2 more times. Suddenly, I was a very popular girl. The team flocked around me. Many people asked where I had played before and were surprised when I said I had never been on a baseball field. The season started in 3 weeks, and I spent 4 days a week practicing with different members of the team, working on my hitting and weaknesses in the outfield. Although I didn't work full-time, I still substituted at the hospital in emergencies when there was a shortage of staff. This kept my certification up to date, and I knew I would be back to full-time work soon. I also volunteered 1 day a week as an EMT. Getting certified was a formality, and I joined the volunteer fire department of the small town I moved to after my divorce. This was a new experience for me, as I had never worked as an emergency room nurse before. Now, I never knew what I would encounter, from horrific car accidents to lifting an obese woman with diabetes who had fallen and couldn't get up, or delivering a baby in the back of a van on the way to the hospital. That's the kind of experience you don't get in nursing school. Our first game came and I struck out twice, but on the 3rd time I hit the ball so accurately that they just watched it fly away. There was a runner on second base, and we raced around the bases together quickly. When I touched home base, the whole team was already there waiting for me. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to win the game, but as the season progressed, we became good enough to make the playoffs. We made it all the way to the quarterfinals. It was an even game at first, but then they started scoring points. I was in right field, and the lefty launched a ball into the fence. I jumped up and managed to catch it right before it went over the fence. They couldn't believe I caught that ball. I was number 5. It was the 9th inning. We had 2 outs, and there was almost no chance of winning. They started teasing, and I made the mistake of pitching the ball low and outside. I hit it down the right field line. The fielder caught the ball, but then slipped and hit his head on the ground. I ran first base, yelling to the umpire, "I'm a nurse!" and kept running toward him. When I got to him, he was conscious, but his breathing was steady. I checked his eyes and realized he probably had a concussion. The medics who were at the game came right behind me, and I helped them apply a neck bandage and load him onto a stretcher. He tried to smile as they carried him off the field. "If you wanted my attention, you could have just flirted, you know?" I smiled, glad he was okay. But that wouldn't have been nearly as much fun. Now when the grandkids ask how we met, you'll be able to say, "I bumped you." What? I grinned and went back to the game. After deliberation, umpires awarded me second base because I was supposed to take it. But it didn't matter, because the next player fouled off 3 balls in a row, and the game was over. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. We were lounging by the pool, enjoying the end of the season, when the manager sent a waitress out with a message that there was a package waiting for us at the front desk. Melania was standing nearby, curious as always. It was a beautiful floral arrangement with a note. "Thanks for helping me with the ambulance. Also, thanks for the guys in the office complimenting me when I told them I got that wound in a bar fight. I'd never have been relieved if they'd known it was a woman who did it. Martin Morris. Melania was utterly delighted. Oh my God, that must have cost a lot of money. You should call him and thank him and ask him to ask you out. Mill, calm down. It's just a gesture of gratitude. Calm down. He tracked you down and sent you a very nice bouquet. He's interested in you, honey. If he was so interested, why didn't he leave a number? That stumped her a little, but then she grinned and led me back to the pool. Then she turned on the wives' net, and a week later I had a piece of paper in my hands. What's this? It's Martin Morris's phone number, also his address, place of employment, age, and marital status. He's single, baby, never been married, was engaged 2 years ago but caught her cheating and called off the wedding. I stared at the sheet. Thanks, Mill, I think. He seems like a nice guy. Like the last 3 you suggested. One turned out to be married, one turned out to be gay, and the third... Well, I felt like I had to shower 3 times a day for a week because of what he suggested. She looked a little embarrassed, but managed it. Well, for that matter, I didn't choose him. I thought about it and called Martin, asking about his condition. He seemed pleased. We talked for a bit, and he asked how I got his number. Oh, I have friends in both low and high circles. Donovan, our pitcher, owns Preston Bearings. The left fielder is an investment specialist at a major bank. And the woman on first? She owns a string of flower stores around the state. What about the low spots? The woman on third base is a police officer. The center fielder is a divorce lawyer, so he's in both camps. Catcher is a convicted felon who reformed and works for Donovan. And as for the left fielder, I was told not to ask. Wow. What about you? I wasn't about to tell him about my money, so I told him I worked as a registered nurse, and we made a good amount of money, but not as much as doctors. A nurse, huh? Say, if I can make an appointment, could you take a look at my eye? It hasn't been working well since the accident. It's a shame, because they said the person who first assisted was a very attractive woman, but I have no idea if that's true. I was told it was true, but you have to judge for yourself. I happen to have an opening on Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. My weekend office is the Brarewood Country Club. Country Club? Really? I'd love to meet with you, but I wonder if I can afford the treatments. No problem. I accept most major insurances. Just go to the counter and ask for the nurse on duty. I'll come and get you. Don't be late. MIL was next to me when I called and couldn't stop giggling. Then she told the rest of the club members gathered by the pool, which led to a long discussion about what I should wear, how to do my hair, how long to wait to take it to bed, how long the engagement party should be, and where to hold the baby shower. It was amusing, but then it became redundant, and I left to cheers of approval. These people needed to get on with their lives. Then I realized that they had a life. They lived a life of affluence and idleness, and anything out of the ordinary was of great interest to them. I really needed to get back to work. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I was watching from the lobby when he appeared. He was handsome. Black hair and blue eyes. Looked like a rougher, smaller version of one of the actors from the Superman movie, but I couldn't remember which one. I was summoned, and I walked out smiling. I was wearing a beautiful summer dress, light, pale yellow, showing off my tanned shoulders and legs, a matching ribbon in my hair, and white low-heeled sandals. From the way he smiled as I approached, he approved of my choice. I held out my hand. Martin. His smile was sweet and a little innocent as he shook my hand gently. A pleasure, Miss Jory. Taking his hand, I led him into the dining room. Brittany, please. It's nice to see you awake and on your feet. It's very nice to see you, and with your eyes open and without blurred vision. His eye was still decorated with yellowed bruises and swollen slightly. Does it still hurt? A little, he shrugged, especially around the eye socket. You shattered it. I pressed my hand to my mouth in shock. I'm so sorry. Why? I should have been careful. Besides, I'm not a very good player, and I think the only reason I was there was because I needed the body. You're a right-handed batter with a strong left-handed corner hitter, and nobody expected you to hit a frozen rope to right field. Then he smiled, a delightful half smile. Personally, I think you did it on purpose, just to get to know me better. Now you have to prove whether the pain you caused me was worth it. We interjected, and the customers at the nearby tables strained to listen. I was surprised when he ordered sweetened iced tea to go with his sandwich. He remarked, "I'm from the South. Drinking tea without sugar where I'm from is a holy thing. And it has to be cane sugar, preferably Dixie Crystals. None of that pagan beetroot crap. But here I have to take what I can get. You could order a beer, you know. I don't really believe in day drinking or drinking in general. I might have an occasional beer, especially if I find myself in a brewery. I rarely touch hard liquor, and I can't stand bourbon. I almost had to turn in my Southern card because of it." We talked about food, and I told him my likes and dislikes. I asked if he had a specialty. "You haven't lived until you've tasted my biscuit and gravy. Of course, you can only get that at breakfast. In my house after—" He stopped suddenly and blushed, and I giggled. When lunch was over, he tried to pay. "No, I invited you. Besides, you're not a member, so you can't. Don't worry, part of my membership package is 4 lunches a month here. If you don't use them, they'll charge you anyway, so you'll save me money. Do you want to go for a walk?" "Well, then I should take you to neutral territory for dinner so I can buy you a drink." He realized what he'd said and blushed slightly. It was adorable. We'll have to revisit this conversation soon. I showed him the golf courses that could be seen from the clubhouse. He was impressed and asked if I played. I told him I had tried, but it didn't work out. He marveled. "You seem like a natural player, and the way you swing the bat makes me think your strokes could be beautiful." "You play?" His smile threatened to split his face. "I went to school on a partial golf scholarship. My senior year we made it to the 8th round before Stanford defeated us. Now I play every now and then when I can find the time." I showed him the tennis courts, and sure enough, he knew how to play and was good at it. By then it was 3 o'clock, and I walked him to his car. He wasn't brave enough to kiss, but he held my hand warmly, and for longer than he probably should have. I didn't mind at all. He mewled as we said our goodbyes, and I finally put him out of his misery. "I really enjoyed having lunch with you, Martin, and I think you mentioned neutral territory for dinner?" Martin blushed charmingly again and stammered an invitation to me for Sunday evening. I held out my hand. "Phone." He held it out to me, and I wrote a message. "Call me early tomorrow morning and tell me where and when." Later, Emile told me he stood in the parking lot for about 5 minutes with his hand on my cheek. Our next dinner turned into a date at a professional baseball game the following week. Thanks to my new knowledge of the sport, I enjoyed the game. When the 7th inning came and the cameras filming love kisses began to circle the bleachers, I looked up at the big board. Realizing that our sector would be next, I grabbed it and continued kissing long after the camera had moved on. His dad, a huge fan of the team, was watching the game on TV. His mom told me that he was so shocked he fell off the couch. I met them on the 6th date, and his mom and I hit it off right away. His father was wary at first, but eventually relaxed and told me that his son had done well. I grinned and agreed with his assessment. The only argument we had was when I told him how much money I had. He tried to stop our meetings, but I grinned and said, "You need to think things through. I have a bat, and I know how to use it." Eventually he smiled and never mentioned money again, until one day he mentioned that when we got married, there would be an ironclad contract protecting my funds. Then he realized what he'd said and tried to win back, but my tongue was so deep in his throat he couldn't speak. We talked about our past partners and agreed that one and done was the rule. And so it finally happened. I stayed the night, and the passion was off the charts. All I can say is that I was amazed at his strength and flexibility. When I woke up the next morning, I saw the sun shining through the curtains and myself spread out around him while he slept. I loved how innocent his face looked. Then I snuggled up against him and went back to sleep. Had he proposed to me yet? No, but it was only a matter of time. And by the way, his biscuits and gravy were delicious. They may have put on a few pounds, but I plan to keep the weight off with bedroom exercises. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. and I purchased a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a middle-class neighborhood. We looked at over 20 options before we made our decision, and "we" is mostly me. Men don't usually notice houses too much, but this house had an inviting patio with an outdoor kitchen, and he was hooked. "Why did we pick this one?" he asked as we signed the papers. "Because it's located in a better school district, and I think I'm about 10 weeks pregnant." Oh. Then I heard a knock. It sounded like my brave and confident husband had collapsed. A year passed, and we were walking with little Louise through the farmer's market. I was referring to my husband. He sometimes seems to question my decisions when it comes to his child. A woman came up and started admiring our little guy. "I love babies so much. I want at least 2 as soon as I can talk my husband into it." There he is, sitting next to me. "Honey, isn't he adorable?" I looked into her eyes and I saw my ex-husband. He had put on weight and seemed to have aged 30 pounds or more, and he was flushed. The line of his baldness was clearly visible. After his divorce, he dated a red-haired girl, but their relationship didn't last more than 6 months. When they got caught, they lost interest and couldn't get it back. I glimpsed their hands, noticing the wedding rings. We exchanged formal greetings, and she slammed her fingers together before leaving. "I know you guys. Your husband won club championships twice, beating my father both times. He still thinks you married him because of his golf skills, but judging by your baby, he doesn't seem to deny it. Your house looks wonderful. I often drive by it on my way to see my dad, and he notices it. It's about 3,000 square feet. I'd bet my realtor's license on it." Then she waved her hand and left, saying it was time for her to get on with setting up the bedroom. I felt Martin squeeze my hand and told me that as soon as our baby was a year old, we would go shopping for a second one. As we were leaving, I explained who we had just met. He was quiet for a few minutes and then smiled. "At the risk of sounding a little cocky, I think we're going to make it work." "Yes, dear. Now tell me, are there any girl names you're particularly drawn to?